Hello and welcome to Bedtime Philosophy, where we slow things down, dive deep into fascinating ideas, and help you unwind with some of the most profound wisdom humanity has ever explored. If you find these slow, calming philosophy talks helpful for falling asleep or just relaxing your mind at the end of the day, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us share thoughtful content with more people like you. Tonight we will examine the 10 biggest questions in metaphysics, questions that have captivated minds for thousands of years and continue to stir debate among philosophers, scientists, and seekers of wisdom. This will not be a dry lecture. Instead, think of it as a gentle unfolding of deep questions. Let your mind settle and allow these timeless mysteries to wash over you like a quiet stream, slowly deepening your understanding of reality, existence, and your place in the cosmos. Metaphysics is, at its core, the study of what exists. It asks questions about the fundamental nature of reality. It is often called the first philosophy because it asks the most basic and foundational questions. What is real? What is being? What does it mean to exist? These are questions that go beyond the scope of science or mathematics. They touch on the very structure of thought itself. And while the answers are elusive, the pursuit itself is transformative. Tonight, we will explore 10 of these great metaphysical questions, starting with perhaps the most fundamental of all. First, what is being? This question goes back to the origins of Western philosophy. The ancient Greek philosopher Parmenides was one of the first to pose it seriously. He argued that being is and non-being is not. That may sound obvious, but Parmenides took it in a radical direction. If being is and non-being is not, then change is impossible. After all, to change is to move from one state of being to another, but that would require being to come from non-being, which he said was impossible. From this, he concluded that all change, motion, and plurality are illusions. Reality for him was one, eternal, unchanging being. Of course, this view is deeply counterintuitive. We experience change all the time, but Parmenides forces us to confront a deep paradox. How can something come to be that was not? Later thinkers like Plato and Aristotle responded to Parmenides by developing more nuanced theories of being and becoming. Aristotle, for instance, distinguished between potentiality and actuality. A seed is potentially a tree, and it becomes an actual tree through a process of change that does not require non-being to exist. This distinction laid the foundation for much of Western metaphysics. Even today, philosophers wrestle with the nature of being and how to account for change, identity, and persistence over time. Second, what is the nature of substance? In metaphysics, a substance is typically considered something that exists independently. Aristotle believed that individual objects like trees, animals, and people are substances, and they possess properties like color, size, and shape. But what makes a substance what it is? Is a substance just a bundle of properties, or is there some underlying core that remains the same even as properties change? This problem was revived in early modern philosophy by thinkers like Descartes, Spinoza, and Leibniz. Descartes famously divided substance into two kinds, thinking substance and extended substance, or mind and body. Spinoza argued for a radically different view, that there is only one substance, which he identified with God or nature. Everything else, he said, is a mode or expression of this single substance. Leibniz proposed that the fundamental substances are monads, indivisible, windowless entities that reflect the entire universe from their own point of view. Each of these views tries to make sense of what substances are and how they ground the reality we experience. In contemporary metaphysics, the debate continues, with some philosophers defending a bundle theory of substance, others favoring substratum theories, and still others exploring more dynamic process-based views. Third, what is identity over time? This question is particularly relevant when we consider things that change. Suppose you have a ship, and over time you replace every plank of wood one by one. Is it still the same ship? This is the famous ship of Theseus problem. If you then take all the old planks and reassemble them into a ship, which one is the real ship of Theseus? This puzzle exposes the difficulty of defining identity over time. Is identity a matter of continuity of parts, or continuity of form, or something else entirely? This question also applies to people. Are you the same person you were 10 years ago, even though your body and mind have changed. Philosophers like John Locke argued that personal identity is a matter of psychological continuity. If you remember being a certain person, then you are that person. But this view raises new puzzles. What if memory fails? What if someone has false memories? What if there are gaps? More recently, philosophers have proposed bodily continuity, brain continuity, or narrative identity as alternatives. In metaphysics, the question remains open and deeply relevant, especially in an age of brain uploading, cloning, and digital replication. Fourth, do abstract objects exist? Numbers, sets, propositions, and universals. These are examples of entities that do not exist in space and time, yet we seem to talk about them meaningfully. When you say 2 plus 2 equals 4, what are you talking about? Are numbers real things that exist in some abstract realm, or are they just useful fictions? Plato believed that abstract objects like numbers and forms exist in a realm beyond the physical world. He called this the world of forms, and he argued that it is more real than the world of appearances. Aristotle, in contrast, thought that universals exist only in the things that instantiate them. The debate continues to this day. Platonists defend the existence of abstract objects as necessary for mathematics and logic, while nominalists deny their existence, arguing that we can do without them. A third group, called conceptualists, holds that abstract objects exist only in the mind. But this raises questions about the objectivity of mathematics. How can a mathematical theorem be true independent of human thought if abstract objects are mental constructs? This problem lies at the intersection of metaphysics, logic, and philosophy of mathematics, and remains one of the most enduring challenges. Fifth, what is causation? At first glance, causation seems simple. One thing causes another. But when we try to define it precisely, the concept becomes slippery. David Hume famously argued that we never perceive causation itself. We only see one event followed by another. From this, he concluded that our belief in causation is a habit of thought, a mental projection onto the world. This skeptical view sparked a long debate about how to ground causal claims. Some philosophers, like Immanuel Kant, responded by claiming that causality is a category of the mind that structures experience. In the 20th century, philosophers like J.L. Mackie and David Lewis developed counterfactual theories of causation. According to Lewis, event A causes event B if, had A not occurred, B would not have occurred either. Others propose regularity theories, interventionist theories, or probabilistic accounts. The metaphysics of causation has profound implications, not only for philosophy but also for science, ethics, and law. If causation is not a real feature of the world, then our scientific explanations and moral judgments may be built on shaky ground. Sixth, what is time? Time flows, or at least it seems to. The past is gone, the future is not yet, and the present constantly slips away. But what is this thing we call time? Is it a real feature of the universe, or just a way we organize experience? Philosophers distinguish between two main theories of time. The A theory holds that time passes, and that only the present is real. The B theory holds that all points in time are equally real, and that the passage of time is an illusion. This view is supported by the theory of relativity in physics, which treats time as a dimension much like space. But our experience of time seems to involve a now that moves, a sense of becoming. Can physics and experience be reconciled? Some thinkers, like Henri Bergson, argued that time as we live it, duration or durée, is fundamentally different from time as measured by clocks. Others, like McTaggart, argued that time itself is unreal, based on contradictions in the concept of temporal change. The problem of time touches on physics, psychology, and metaphysics, and it raises profound questions about death, identity, and the meaning of life. Seventh, is there free will? If the universe is governed by laws, and every event has a cause, then are our choices truly free? This question lies at the intersection of metaphysics and ethics. Determinism is the view that every event is caused by prior events, in accordance with natural laws. If determinism is true, then it seems that our actions are the inevitable result of factors beyond our control. On the other hand, if events happen without cause, as in indeterminism, then our actions seem random and unfree. So how can we be responsible agents? This is the classic problem of free will. Philosophers have responded in different ways. Compatibilists argue that free will is compatible with determinism. As long as we act in accordance with our desires and intentions, we are free, even if those desires are themselves caused. Libertarians, in contrast, believe that free will requires genuine openness, that we could have done otherwise in a real sense. Some turn to agent causation, the idea that people can cause actions in a way not reducible to prior events. Others look to quantum mechanics, which introduces indeterminacy at the micro level. But randomness does not equal freedom. The metaphysical challenge is to make sense of freedom in a world of cause and effect, and this has implications for moral responsibility, punishment, and the self. Eighth, what is the mind? Is it something separate from the body, or is it identical with the brain? This is the mind-body problem. Descartes famously argued that mind and body are two distinct substances, one immaterial and thinking, the other material and extended. This view, called dualism, allows for the soul to survive the death of the body, but it faces serious problems. How can an immaterial mind interact with a material body? Modern science has increasingly favored physicalism, the view that everything is physical, including the mind. According to this view, mental states are either identical with brain states or are realized by physical processes. But this leads to other puzzles. Can consciousness be explained in physical terms? What is it like to be a bat, as Thomas Nagel asked? What is the hard problem of consciousness, as David Chalmers called it? The question of why and how physical processes give rise to subjective experience. Some propose that consciousness is an emergent property, while others suggest it is fundamental, like space and time. Panpsychists argue that all matter has some form of experience. The metaphysics of mind is one of the most active and mysterious areas of contemporary philosophy. Ninth, what is the nature of possibility and necessity? When we say something could have been different, or must be the case, what do we mean? Modal metaphysics studies the nature of possibility, necessity, and counterfactuals. Saul Kripke revolutionized this field in the 20th century with his work on naming and necessity. He showed that some truths are necessary even though they are known a posteriori, like the fact that water is H2O. This challenged the traditional view that all necessary truths are known a priori. Kripke introduced the idea of possible world semantics, where we evaluate modal claims by imagining other possible worlds. If something is necessary, it is true in all possible worlds. If it is possible, it is true in at least one. But what are these possible worlds? Are they real? David Lewis argued that all possible worlds are just as real as the actual world. This is modal realism. Others see them as mere fictions or abstract representations. The metaphysics of modality asks what it means for something to be possible, necessary, or impossible, and how these notions relate to the structure of reality. 10th, why is there something rather than nothing? This may be the ultimate metaphysical question. Why does anything exist at all? Why not nothing? Some philosophers, like Leibniz, propose that the ultimate reason for existence must lie in a necessary being, something that must exist and cannot not exist. For him, this was God, the being whose essence is existence. Others have rejected this line of reasoning, suggesting that the universe just is, with no further explanation. Contemporary philosophers like Derek Parfit and Timothy Williamson have explored various answers, from brute facts to modal principles. Some appeal to the idea that nothing is unstable, that quantum fluctuations could spontaneously produce a universe. But this often presupposes a physical vacuum, which is not really nothing. The question challenges our deepest intuitions and resists easy answers. Perhaps the question itself is flawed, based on an expectation of reason where none need apply, or perhaps it points to something profound and transcendent. In any case, the mystery remains. Let us now begin our gentle journey through the great questions of metaphysics. These questions are not meant to be solved in one night, or even in a lifetime. They are the kinds of questions that deepen with time, that sit at the edge of thought, and invite us to return to them again and again. So let us begin slowly, quietly, with the first of these mysteries. What is being? What does it mean to exist? This question has echoed through the centuries. The ancient philosopher Parmenides claimed that being is and non-being is not. From this seemingly simple idea, he concluded something astonishing. That change is an illusion. that everything that exists is one eternal, unchanging being. He reasoned that if something changes, it must either come from being or from non-being. But something cannot come from non-being because non-being does not exist. And if it comes from being, then it already exists and there is no change. So, he said, change and motion and difference are illusions of the senses. What really exists is one continuous being without parts or change. This is deeply counterintuitive. It does not match our experience. But it challenged later thinkers to come up with better explanations of how change and being could coexist. Plato responded by saying that the world of our senses is not the true reality. It is a world of appearances, of becoming. But behind it is a realm of eternal forms or ideas. These forms do not change. They are perfect, timeless, and real. For example, there is the form of beauty, the form of goodness, the form of circle. The things in our world are imperfect copies of these eternal forms. A beautiful painting participates in the form of beauty. A circle drawn in the sand participates in the form of circle. So being, for Plato, is located in this eternal, unchanging world of forms. Aristotle, his student, took a more grounded approach. He believed that being exists in individual things like trees, animals, and stars. He said that everything has both actuality and potentiality. An acorn is actually a seed, but potentially a tree. Change is the movement from potentiality to actuality. So being is not frozen or static. It has a structure that allows for change and development. Aristotle also said that everything has a purpose or telos. This teleological view of nature shaped Western philosophy for centuries. In modern metaphysics, we continue to ask what it means for something to be. Are there different kinds of being? Do abstract objects like numbers exist in the same way as chairs or planets? Is there a difference between necessary being and contingent being? These questions bring us to the very foundation of reality. To think about being is to stand at the threshold of all thought. And now we come to the second question. What is substance? This is the question of what things are made of at the most basic level. Not in terms of matter or atoms, but in terms of metaphysical structure. Aristotle defined a substance as something that exists in itself and not in something else. A tree is a substance. Its color or shape or size are properties that exist in it. The tree can exist without that particular color, but the color cannot exist without the tree. In this view, substances are the primary units of reality. But is this view right? In the early modern period, philosophers began to rethink substance. Descartes believed that there were two fundamental kinds of substance: thinking substance, which is the mind, and extended substance, which is the body or matter. This is known as dualism. Spinoza, on the other hand, said that there is only one substance, and that is God or nature. Everything else, including individual minds and bodies, are modes or expressions of this single substance. For him, the universe is one infinite, self-causing reality. Leibniz introduced yet another idea. He said that the world is made up of monads, which are simple, indivisible substances that have no parts and do not interact directly with one another. Each monad reflects the entire universe from its own perspective, like a mirror. These views are strikingly different, but they all try to answer the same question. What is the fundamental structure of reality? In contemporary metaphysics, this question has evolved into debates between bundle theory and substratum theory. Bundle theory says that an object is just a bundle of properties. A red ball is nothing more than redness, roundness, and solidness combined together. Substratum theory says that behind the properties there is a core, a substratum that holds them together but has no properties of its own. Still others propose a process view of reality, where substances are not things, but events or patterns of change. The question of substance is not just abstract. It affects how we think about objects, persons, and even the universe itself. What am I? Am I a bundle of thoughts and experiences? Am I a soul, a body, a pattern, or something else entirely? These are metaphysical questions with deep emotional weight. The third great question of metaphysics is about identity over time. What does it mean for something to remain the same thing as it changes? This is the classic problem of the ship of Theseus. Suppose you have a ship, and over time you replace every wooden plank one by one. Is it still the same ship? And what if you take all the old planks and build a new ship? Which one is the real ship of Theseus? This puzzle illustrates the difficulty of defining identity when all the parts change. The problem is not limited to ships. It applies to you and me. Are you the same person you were 5 years ago? Your body has changed. Your memories have faded or shifted. Your beliefs and values may have evolved, yet you feel that you are still you. What makes this continuity possible? John Locke proposed that personal identity is based on memory. If you remember doing something, then you are the person who did it. But this view faces problems. What about forgetting? What if your memories are false? What about people with amnesia or dementia? Other philosophers have argued for bodily continuity. If your body persists, you persist. But bodies change too. Then there are theories of psychological continuity or narrative identity, where your identity is the unfolding story of your life. Some modern thinkers explore identity in the context of technology. If you could upload your brain into a computer, would the copy be you? If a teleporter scanned your body, destroyed it, and rebuilt you on Mars, is that still you? These questions are no longer science fiction. They are pressing issues in philosophy of mind, artificial intelligence, and ethics. At the heart of the problem is this: what is it that makes you, you? And how does that thing survive change, decay, or transformation? Now let us consider the fourth mystery. Do abstract objects exist? When we say that 2 plus 2 equals 4, or that a triangle has 3 sides, what are we talking about? Are numbers and mathematical truths real entities that exist independently of us? Or are they human inventions, useful fictions that help us make sense of the world? Plato believed that numbers, geometrical forms, and other abstract objects exist in a realm beyond space and time. He called this the world of forms. In this realm, the form of triangle exists perfectly, eternally, and unchanging. Every triangle we draw or see is just a shadow or copy of this perfect form. This view is called Platonism, and it remains influential in the philosophy of mathematics. Aristotle disagreed. He said that universals exist only in the objects that instantiate them. There is no separate realm. Triangularity exists in each triangle, not in a world beyond. Other philosophers took different paths. Nominalists deny the existence of abstract objects altogether. They say that only particular things exist, and talk of abstract entities is just a convenient way of speaking. Conceptualists hold that abstract objects exist only in the mind. A triangle is not a real object, but a concept we use to organize our experience. But if numbers are just in our heads, how can mathematical truths be objective? How can different people arrive at the same mathematical conclusions? Some philosophers argue that the indispensability of mathematics in science points to the reality of abstract objects. If our best scientific theories rely on numbers, then perhaps numbers are real in some deep way. But real in what sense? They are not located in space. They do not have mass. They do not cause things to happen, yet they seem to exist. The debate over abstract objects is not just about mathematics. It touches on language, logic, morality, and meaning. Are moral truths abstract entities? Are propositions? Is beauty an abstract quality? These questions challenge the boundary between the mental and the real, between thought and existence. As we pause here at the edge of these great questions, take a moment to breathe and feel the vastness of what we are exploring. These mysteries are not meant to be solved all at once. They are meant to awaken wonder, to open the doors of the mind, and to remind us that reality is far deeper than it appears. Let these thoughts drift through you gently. Let them settle into the quiet places of your imagination. When you are ready, we will continue with the next set of metaphysical questions. But for now, just rest in the presence of these ancient and ongoing inquiries, and let the calm of philosophy guide your inner world. Let us now continue our journey deeper into the philosophical mysteries that define metaphysics. As you listen, allow these questions to settle gently into your awareness. There is no need to answer them right away. Let them unfold like a slow sunrise in your mind, filling the space with calm curiosity. We arrive now at the fifth question. What is causation? It seems simple at first. One thing causes another. You strike a match and it lights. You push a ball and it rolls. But what exactly is this connection we call cause and effect? Can we see it? Can we define it? The Scottish philosopher David Hume famously challenged our assumptions about causation. He pointed out that we never observe a cause itself. All we ever see is one event followed by another. The match is struck and then the flame appears, but we never observe a necessary connection. Our belief in causation, Hume said, is a habit of thought formed by seeing patterns of succession. When one event regularly follows another, we assume they are causally connected, but this assumption may not reflect reality. Hume's skepticism shook the foundations of science, which relies on the idea that causes produce effects. If causation is just a mental habit, then the laws of nature may be nothing more than descriptions of regularity. In response to Hume, the philosopher Immanuel Kant proposed that causation is not something we learn from experience, but something we bring to experience. According to Kant, our minds are structured in such a way that we cannot perceive the world except through the lens of causality. In this view, causation is a necessary condition for experience itself. It is not something we discover, but something we impose. In the modern era, philosophers have developed new ways of thinking about causation. The counterfactual theory, made famous by David Lewis, says that event A causes event B if, had A not occurred, B would not have occurred either. This theory focuses on what would happen in different possible worlds. Others have proposed interventionist accounts, which define causation in terms of manipulation. If changing A leads to a change in B, then A causes B. Still others focus on probabilistic causation. If A increases the probability of B occurring, it may be a cause of B. But each of these theories faces difficulties. What about complex systems with many interacting parts? What about cases of omission or overdetermination, where multiple causes lead to the same effect? Causation remains a deeply puzzling concept, yet it is central to how we think about science, ethics, and everyday life. We hold people responsible for the effects of their actions. We seek to explain the world in terms of causes and effects. If causation is an illusion or merely a mental projection, then what becomes of explanation itself? Perhaps causation is not a single thing, but a family of related ideas. Perhaps it is more like a lens than a substance. Whatever it is, the metaphysical question remains wide open. And now we arrive at the sixth great question. What is time? Time flows, or so it seems. The present becomes the past. The future becomes the present. We are born, we grow, we change, we age, and eventually we die. Time is woven into every moment of our experience. But when we try to pin it down, it becomes elusive. What is time, really? Is it an objective feature of the universe, or is it something that exists only in consciousness? Philosophers distinguish between two main theories of time. The first is the A theory, also known as presentism. According to this view, only the present is real. The past has ceased to exist. The future does not yet exist. Time flows, and what is real is constantly changing. The second view is the B theory, or eternalism. According to this view, all moments in time are equally real. The past, present, and future exist like different points on a map. The flow of time is an illusion, a feature of human consciousness rather than reality itself. This view finds support in physics, particularly in the theory of relativity. In relativity, time is treated as a dimension, similar to space. Different observers can experience different orders of events, depending on their motion. There is no single, universal now. Time is part of the fabric of space-time. But this scientific view clashes with our lived experience. We feel the present. We remember the past. We anticipate the future. The philosopher J.M.E. McTaggart argued that time is unreal because the very idea of temporal passage leads to contradiction. He said that we cannot make sense of past, present, and future without generating logical problems. Henry Bergson, a French philosopher, distinguished between measured time and lived time. He called the former clock time and the latter duration. Duration is the flow of experience from within, the felt sense of becoming. He argued that time as lived is more real than time as measured. The metaphysical question of time touches every aspect of our existence. If time is an illusion, then so is change, memory, hope, and loss. If the future already exists, then are our choices already determined? If only the present is real, then what happens to history? Does time have a beginning? Will it have an end? Is the universe eternal or finite? These questions also intersect with cosmology, theology, and physics. They are among the deepest questions we can ask. And like time itself, they resist easy answers. Let us now turn to the seventh question, which has puzzled philosophers, scientists, and theologians for centuries. Do we have free will? Are we truly free to choose our actions? or are we bound by causes beyond our control? If the universe is governed by laws and every event has a cause, then how can we be free? This is the problem of determinism. If everything that happens is the result of prior causes, then everything we do is also caused. Our choices, our thoughts, our desires all flow from earlier events. In that case, could we have done otherwise? Are we merely complex machines following the laws of nature? Some philosophers say yes. These are the hard determinists. They believe that free will is an illusion. We feel free, but our choices are determined by our biology, our upbringing, our environment, and the laws of physics. Others disagree. The compatibilists argue that free will and determinism can coexist. They say that we are free as long as we act in accordance with our desires and intentions, even if those desires are themselves caused. For example, if I choose to read a book because I want to, and no one is forcing me, then I am free, even if my desire to read has a cause. Compatibilists redefine freedom not as the ability to do otherwise, but as the ability to act according to one's inner motives. Then there are the libertarians, who hold that true freedom requires the power to choose among alternatives. They say that we are not entirely determined, and that we have the ability to initiate actions. This view often involves the idea of agent causation, where a person can be the origin of an action in a way that is not reducible to prior causes. But libertarianism faces its own problems. How can uncaused choices be rational? If something happens without a cause, does that not make it random? And if it is random, is it still a free choice? Some thinkers have looked to quantum mechanics, where indeterminacy plays a role. But randomness at the quantum level does not seem to help. Random events are not choices. Neuroscience has also entered the debate. Some experiments suggest that the brain initiates decisions before we become consciously aware of them. Does this mean that free will is an illusion? Or does consciousness play a different role, shaping and reflecting on our actions after the fact? The question of free will is not just theoretical. It affects how we think about morality, justice, and responsibility. If people are not free, can they be blamed for their actions? Can they deserve praise or punishment? What does it mean to be a person if our choices are not our own? And what happens to love, creativity, and meaning if we are just complex mechanisms responding to inputs? Whether we believe in free will or not, we live as if we are free. We make choices. We regret them. We celebrate them. The experience of freedom is real, even if its metaphysical status is uncertain. Perhaps the question is not whether we are free in an absolute sense, but what kind of freedom is meaningful to us. And perhaps freedom is not a fact about the universe, but a way of relating to our own experience. As we reach the end of this section of our journey, let us pause again and breathe. These questions are not puzzles to be solved quickly. They are invitations to wonder. They open us to deeper layers of thought, to the mystery of being alive and aware in a universe we barely understand. In this moment, there is nothing to do, nothing to prove, only a quiet space to reflect. You are here, now, and that in itself is a wonder. When you are ready, we will continue onward into the final mysteries of metaphysics. We will explore the nature of mind, the strange reality of possibility, and the ultimate question of why there is something rather than nothing. For now, simply rest in the knowledge that asking these questions is already a form of wisdom. Now we come to the eighth great question in metaphysics, a question that sits at the very center of consciousness itself. What is the mind? Are our thoughts and experiences merely the activity of neurons, or is there something more to us than our bodies? This is the classic mind-body problem. It asks whether the mind is fundamentally separate from the physical world, or if it can be fully explained by it. The most famous answer to this question in Western philosophy comes from René Descartes. Descartes believed that the mind and body are two distinct kinds of substance. The body is material, extended in space, and subject to physical laws. The mind is immaterial, not located anywhere in space, and capable of thought. He famously said, "I think, therefore I am," using his ability to think as proof of his own existence as a thinking being. But if the mind is not physical, how can it interact with the physical body? How can an immaterial thought cause my arm to move? This interaction problem haunted Descartes and has remained a challenge for dualists ever since. In contrast, physicalism holds that everything that exists is physical, including the mind. According to this view, mental states are either identical to physical brain states or are realized by them in some systematic way. The mind is what the brain does. This seems to align with neuroscience, which maps thoughts, emotions, and memories to specific brain regions. But even if the brain explains behavior, can it explain experience? This is where the problem of consciousness arises. What is it like to see the color red, to feel pain, to fall in love, to remember a childhood dream? These inner experiences, called qualia, seem to resist explanation in physical terms. Philosopher Thomas Nagel famously asked, "What is it like to be a bat?" A bat uses sonar to perceive the world, and even if we knew everything about its brain, we still would not know what it is like to experience the world as a bat. David Chalmers coined the term the hard problem of consciousness to describe this mystery. The easy problems are those of behavior, memory, and perception. The hard problem is why any of it feels like anything at all. Why is there something it is like to be conscious? Some philosophers propose that consciousness is an emergent property, something that arises when physical systems reach a certain complexity. Others suggest that consciousness is fundamental, that it cannot be explained in terms of simpler parts. Some even propose panpsychism, the idea that all matter has some form of experience, however simple. In this view, consciousness is everywhere and in everything, from electrons to human minds. This radical idea seeks to solve the hard problem by placing consciousness at the base of reality rather than at the top. Other theories explore functionalism, which says that what matters is not the material, but the structure and function. If a system processes information in the right way, it is conscious, whether it is a brain or a computer. This view opens the door to artificial consciousness. Could a machine think? Could it feel? The mind-body problem is no longer just philosophical. It touches on artificial intelligence, neuroscience, ethics, and our understanding of self. Are we just brains and bodies, or something more? Is your mind a pattern that could be uploaded or copied? If so, would that copy still be you? The metaphysics of mind brings us face to face with the mystery of self-awareness, the deep and intimate experience of being alive. And yet, like all the great metaphysical questions, it refuses to be pinned down. It remains open, like a window into the soul of reality itself. And now we turn to the ninth question, which is both strange and powerful. What are possibility and necessity? These are known as modal concepts, and they play a crucial role in how we think about the world. When we say that something is possible, we mean that it could be the case. When we say something is necessary, we mean it must be the case. For example, it is possible that it will rain tomorrow. It is necessary that 2 + 2 = 4. But what do these claims really mean? What makes something possible or necessary? One way to understand these ideas is through possible worlds. The philosopher Saul Kripke revolutionized this field by proposing that we evaluate modal claims by imagining different worlds. A possible world is not necessarily a separate universe. It is simply a way things could have been. If something is necessary, it is true in all possible worlds. If something is possible, it is true in at least one. For example, it is necessarily true that all bachelors are unmarried, because in every possible world where the word bachelor means what it does here, bachelors are not married. But it is only contingently true that you are listening to this video. You could have chosen to do something else. These modal ideas help us understand language, logic, ethics, and metaphysics. But they also raise deep questions. Are possible worlds real? The philosopher David Lewis said yes. He believed that all possible worlds are just as real as the actual world. In his view, there is an infinite number of fully real worlds, each with its own people, mountains, laws of physics, and histories. This view is called modal realism. It is elegant and powerful, but also strange and hard to accept. Other philosophers prefer to see possible worlds as abstract entities or as useful fictions. They help us make sense of modal logic, but are not real in the same way our world is. Still others suggest that possibility and necessity are grounded in the nature of things themselves. A glass can break because it has the power to do so. A triangle must have 3 sides because that is its essence. This essentialist view sees modal properties as built into the structure of reality. The metaphysics of modality affects how we think about identity, explanation, and causation. Could you have been born to different parents? Could the laws of physics have been different? Is it possible for something to come from nothing? These are not just hypothetical questions. They shape how we understand freedom, morality, and the very nature of reality. When we imagine how things might have been, we are engaging in metaphysical reflection. We are exploring the deep structure of what is, what could be, and what must be. In doing so, we touch the boundary between logic and imagination, between reason and wonder. At last, we come to the 10th and final question. Why is there something rather than nothing? This is perhaps the most profound and unsettling question in all of metaphysics. Why does anything exist at all? Why is there a universe, a world, a mind, a moment, instead of absolute emptiness? The philosopher Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz posed this question in the 17th century and offered an answer. He said that everything that exists must have a reason for existing. This is the principle of sufficient reason. According to Leibniz, the ultimate reason for existence must lie in a necessary being, something that must exist and explains everything else. For him, this necessary being was God, a perfect and eternal mind who chose to create the best of all possible worlds. This idea has been echoed by theologians, cosmologists, and philosophers throughout history, but not everyone agrees. Some thinkers argue that the universe just exists as a brute fact, with no further explanation. It simply is. Others turn to science. Some physicists suggest that the universe could arise from a quantum vacuum, where fluctuations produce space, time, and matter. But this raises more questions. What is a quantum vacuum? Is it truly nothing, or is it a kind of something? If there are laws that govern these fluctuations, where did the laws come from? Can nothing really give rise to something? Or does the very concept of nothingness break down under scrutiny? The question may not even be well formed. As some philosophers suggest, asking why there is something rather than nothing presupposes that nothingness is a real possibility. But what if nothingness is not a coherent idea? What if being is more fundamental than non-being? What if existence is the default, not the exception? These reflections are dizzying, but they also bring us closer to the edge of thought. They remind us of how little we know and how much there is to wonder at. Why do you exist? Why is there a world to wake up into, to explore, to love, to lose? Why is there anything at all? Perhaps there is no final answer, or perhaps the question itself is the answer. To ask it is to awaken to the mystery of being. To ask it is to stand in awe of the gift of existence. And so we reach the end of our journey through the 10 greatest questions in metaphysics. We have wandered through the landscapes of being, substance, identity, abstraction, causation, time, freedom, mind, modality, and existence itself. We have heard the voices of philosophers across time, from ancient Greece to modern thought, each offering glimpses into the nature of reality. And yet, none of these questions has been finally settled. They remain open, alive, and deeply human. That is the beauty of metaphysics. It does not offer quick answers. It offers depth, it offers clarity, and most of all, it offers wonder. The world is not just a place of things. It is a place of meaning, of mystery, of questions that awaken the soul. These questions are not obstacles. They are invitations. Invitations to think more deeply, to live more thoughtfully, and to see the world not just as it appears, but as it truly is. Thank you for joining me on this philosophical journey. If you found peace, inspiration, or insight in these reflections, I invite you to subscribe and return again. There are many more questions to explore. Until then, rest well, and let the quiet hum of wonder guide you through the mystery of being. Good night, and may your thoughts be deep and calm.